Well, hello. Loose Gadgies, the cheapest looking podcast on the internet, but the
Yes.
best. All the money's invested in the content, not in the posh green screens. Obviously. Today, follow up after a somewhat successful Autism episode last week, which was viewed non-stop from the Tuesday it went out right the way through till Friday afternoon.
Is that because Michael Bryson's watched it 200 times?
Potentially. Given his innuendos that he left in the comments.
Of,
But I thought I might as well do a follow-up straight off the bat. And I started looking at the kinds of questions that parents have, concerns before like during pregnancy and whatnot, and after. And the first question was really relevant to me because I didn't get one. So, is an early diagnosis important? Now, I have found a form from an educational establishment that's based on the DSM-5, so the diagnostic manual that they use for these sorts of conditions. I didn't realise it had gone up to number 5. And it's a PDF download for parents, and you can fill in the questionnaire about your child. And it's meant to be like a screener questionnaire on, a bit like you did with the ADHD. It's not a positive one, but it is a negative one. So it'll give you a no, but it's not necessarily a yes. But it'll at least help you. It's to screen people out, so you can find all the definite no's, right? So I'll link it in the description. I'll stick it on the social media posts and whatnot, so you can go download it. It's fairly comprehensive, mine. There's a fair few pages in it, but it looked interesting, so I'll include that. But is an early diagnosis important? Well, I didn't get one. So I was diagnosed age 45, just after my 45th birthday. So I was going through that over my birthday because it was a handful of appointments over a bunch of different weeks with 3 different clinicians, right? With a summary at the end, and then you can request at the end a written summary. And I really wanted that because which I've shown you that, haven't I, Mark? The written summary of their sort of their initial breakdown of what they heard and saw and thought, and the notes they used to lead up towards the final diagnosis. I've been in two minds about this. That if I'd been diagnosed back in the day, bearing in mind back in the day they were still putting people with autism in asylums, in mental institutions, because they didn't really understand it. So these days there's a greater understanding. There's more diagnostic tools. It's more out there in the zeitgeist, if you like. Now they understand more what's going on. They don't necessarily know why, but. And what it's done for me is I've built ways of masking. And so I've built up tolerances to certain sounds and smells and tastes, and being in certain company, I've still got limits, but being around certain social situations with lots of people I don't know, all of that kind of thing. I've built all these ways of tolerating it, or finding ways to manage it, in a way that I hope that no one noticed. Because until I had my diagnosis, I didn't know what the hell it was. I just thought, I don't want to stand out like that, because that's what led to all the bullying and all the other harassment I used to get for being so different. So I was determined not to look different, right? So, but I learned all those skills, right? So now I'm more tolerant of certain things. I can go to more places than perhaps I could have. So I don't know. Early diagnosis means you get more support, but then would they miss out on all the things that I've taught myself over the years? And it is myself. Nobody's taught me these things. I've learned these things through having to. Needs
It's
must.
a double-edged sword, isn't it? There's no right and no wrong answer. But one of the things that just came in mind there was that if you know at an early age, does that give you excuses for not doing things where you probably pushed to maybe do them?
That's the other thing, that I did expose myself to. Like, I may never have gone for any office jobs and whatnot. I may never have gone. I may never have met people like you because of that. I may never have met this. I may never have learned that. So I don't know. As long as knowing early doesn't wrap you in cotton wool, because there are
Some parents would, though, isn't it?
yeah, and there are behavioural therapies out there developed for people with ASD that help normalise them. A bit like you could say it's a bit like when you have an allergy and you have exposure therapy.
Yeah.
And they gradually expose you to bigger and bigger doses of this thing, and your body eventually sort of gets used to it and stops reacting to it, right? So there are behavioural therapies like that. There are also courses out there in conjunction with parents that help socialise people like me and understand why this needs to happen, why that happens, why people might do this, and get used to random things happening and it not freaking you out. So my honest answer is I don't know. I don't know. I think I've ended up pretty scarred because of some of it, but then at the same time I've learned a lot, and in some ways I think I'm more resilient to some things because of it.
Here's the one for you, Simon. I watched the boxing on Friday night, and at the end of the fight, Anthony Joshua created a famous saying that Michael Bryson loves, and the saying was, "It is what it is."
And was that when he fought that
the UFC fight on Friday night?
Yeah. What was the result?
He sparked him unconscious in the second round.
Really?
Yeah, it's a brutal. You have to watch it. It's a brutal knockout. But the principle being is that when you say what you were saying there, it's almost like it didn't sound like regret or whatever. But it's you can't say it is what it is. That is it. That's what happened. Now it's focus forward, isn't it?
Yeah. This is the thing. You know what I'm like. I'm a bit of a reflector. You know me. I'm always reflecting on what. And I've learned that. Because I always look back on my behaviours. Why did that happen? What did I say then? What was that reaction about? And that's taught me a way of being, right? So now I do that with everything. I reflect on all kinds of things.
Reflecting is also education. You're reflecting, educate forward.
It is, and I've learned so much, and I thought, would I be less able? I mean, I'm not saying I'm perfect. There are still things that I just simply can't do. And I've accepted that. But there are things I'm sure I wouldn't be able to do had I not been forced to confront some of them. So I don't know is my answer. Whether I think it's important, if you can know, perhaps you should know. But then what you do with that knowledge is what's important. So these days, because there are ways of knowing, perhaps you should know. But then don't treat them special. Don't treat them like they're delicate.
When you said about back in the day for your age and my age, there was a borderline where you might be put in asylum. That wouldn't happen now. So probably the decision to go with early diagnosis is much better now than it was then.
Oh yeah, there is that. There's less reason not to. There's more reason to actually get out there and figure it. But at least some people would say once you're armed with the knowledge, you can then make choices, right? So maybe it's better to at least have the knowledge. So the next question on the list was, can you prevent it? And the simple answer is no. Or we don't know. Now some claim, oh well, it's all about a lack of this supplement, that supplement. Well no. Because it also has a genetic component. There are 100 genes in various combinations that have been, depending on which papers you read and whatnot, they've been identified as markers influencing. And because autism has so many things in it, they could all be in control of all of these different things. And at the end of the day, it's a neurological disorder, so my pathways are just built different. So it's something that happened whilst I was growing. Now, bearing in mind, I have two brothers who are complete opposites. Stu is fully social, life and soul of the party, likes the attention, all of that. This is one reason I think why he's so good with food and beverage. Because when he's running pubs and whatnot, he's checking people. Are you alright, having a laugh and this and that, going up and saying hello to their dogs and whatnot, and making sure everything's so, having a bit bants with them, getting to know everybody, remembers all of them. But at the same time, he can't stand it when his beer towels aren't all lined up with his drip trays and all of this, right? So he's got a few little obsessions and things that he can't leave alone. But as far as social things go and tolerances, he doesn't have any of the troubles that I have. My older brother, he's the same. I mean, we were so opposite growing up that the two of them were not good to be around. Me being as opposite as I was, they were just two of the most annoying people on the planet. Well, one of them still might be. But these days, I mean, Stu's chilled out a lot, but it just shows that while yes, there is a genetic component, you're not destined or predestined to have a child with autism. My other two brothers, if you'd met them two first, you wouldn't expect me, so
it must be difficult. I mean, you're not the firstborn, are you?
No, I'm the middle.
And for parents to sort of suspect that something's wrong, it would be difficult if you're the firstborn because you don't know any different, do you?
No,
if you've got a second or a third child and you're like, this one's not quite, there, and then you would probably go and seek some help, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was the only one that was planned. Some reckon it was to do with age. If you're having kids later in life and whatnot, at an older age. But there's no proof of any of it. So,
because there's supposed to be, depending on a certain age, things like Down syndrome, etc. Higher
now
risk.
That's got more of a scientific basis that, because that's about a missing chromosome or a duplicated chromosome. So that's more well understood. Although you quite often find that those with Down syndrome also have autism. So I don't know if there's a correlation or whether that's just coincidental or whether it always happens, but it seems like it's not an always thing. So, can you develop autism? No, it's the way you're built.
Yeah,
it's the way you're built. You can be like me, diagnosed late, but develop it. No. Or at least that's the current understanding. No. Do vaccines cause them? No. It's genetic. It's something you are born with. And it's the way you're made. You can't just suddenly be made that way. Because it's neurodevelopmental, right? So it's about your neural pathways. So even if they break down, that becomes more things like dementia and stuff like that, right? So forgetfulness and aphasia and whatnot, like Bruce Willis has, where you start forgetting things and whatnot, right? It's not the same as just the way you operate, right? So I've got a couple of other bits on there, but I think can it be cured? No, for the same reasons, because it's neurodevelopmental. It's all about pathways and the way my roads are built and the way your roads are built, that kind of thing. So
when you say it can't be cured, but can it be suppressed?
There are plenty of treatments and there are ways around it. So there are, much like, depression, like for me, I'll never get rid of that, but there are coping strategies. There are ways of, which is why I went on to this next bit, was masking. That where you find masking's a very common trait. Apparently more often than girls than boys, but masking's where an autistic person will consciously or unconsciously try to hide certain behaviours. They may stop themselves flapping their hands or making a noise to fit in with societal norms. Yeah, you should see me. I'm very, when no one's about, I'm walking around on tiptoes sometimes and just doing daft stuff. I don't know why I'm doing it, but it makes me feel comfortable in a certain moment, especially if I'm in a good mood. My hands and feet are all over the place. This can lead to people not getting the support they need. So it took some really good relationships with the people I was working with that led me down that. And a person I hired, their partner happened to have gone through the test, and I got talking to her about this and that. So it was all coincidence how I ended up actually just putting myself forward for it. I never felt I was quite right, but I never looked into what it was. I just thought I'm a bit broken, right? So, but that leads you on to, can you have autism and be social? Yes. I also have ADHD, so when I'm in a situation where I feel comfortable, I can be very chatty, as you know, as you've sometimes suffered, right? So I can be very chatty, I can be very social.
We both suffer equally and opposite.
Yeah. So and I can crack jokes. I can be, in some ways you wouldn't know, right? Especially when we used to work together as a team. You wouldn't know once I was comfortable. You sort of wouldn't know, but I think you have to be very conscious that most of the people like me are trying to fit in the world with everyone else, and I'm trying to take part in your world.
Yeah.
Whether that be the type of job that I pick or have to pick, because there aren't jobs for people like me really. The best way I can do that, because people are dicks, people can be judgmental, people can not want to understand all of that. So it's on me, and has always been on me, to fit in with you. Not you, but the royal you, although that's sort of changing, and people are sort of understanding that there are things I do that I don't mean to do them. That if you know me, I try and help just about everybody, even if it's at a detriment to myself. This leads us to a couple of other bits, a couple of other little bits, like, is OCD a form of autism? No. OCD is obsessive compulsive disorder, and true OCD comes with intrusive thoughts. So you have to do this, or this will happen. You have to do this, or this will happen. You have to do this, or this will happen. And the only way to get rid of it sometimes is to just do the thing. Now, sometimes that's harmless, and tapping spoons and stirring tea and flicking lights on and off, all of these things I do. But sometimes it can be very intrusive in how long it takes me to get dressed sometimes, that kind of thing. But the thing you have to remember is just almost... you'd be surprised at how many people do have OCD. Right? And there are some people who have non-zero values. So if you imagine that autism is just a whole raft of dials of different things for different situations, and most of mine are between 7 and 10. I have a few 10. I have a few that are,
10 or high. Yeah, 10's high.
Yes. Yeah, so from 0 to 10. So mine are 100% on some. I'm quite strong on some of the diagnoses that they gave, and I hide them well through practice. So not having back and forth verbal communication. So when parents make noises to their kids and whatnot, the baby usually responds, or the kid usually says, none of that. And not copying your facial expressions. So you're being all happy and cheery, and
can't copy them.
Right. Yeah. Not responding to their name, just because we're off in space somewhere, not paying attention. That happens to me a lot.
Yeah.
Still does. Not using gestures like pointing or waving. Some of these things can seem pointless, and to not have they can feel like you're moving outside of your space. Like you can feel vulnerable when you're pointing. And these days I don't even think about it. I gesticulate a lot. My arms are all over the place because my thoughts are very visual. So I'm always describing literally what I'm seeing and moving the things around with my hands and all that. Not speaking, but especially by 16 months. But sometimes language skills can be lost. So you could start out verbal and then regress. I mean, there's obviously a lot more on that downloadable PDF about how they are in certain situations, how they react to certain things, certain sensory inputs, sensory overloads, how long it takes them to recover from certain types of stimulus and that kind of thing. There's a lot. So
there was one interesting thing that I always thought, like when I would ask you what I would call a simple question, you immediately get a response back. But if I asked you a really tough technical question, it almost seems like you commute the question and go internally, and your eyes start to compute the question. And I just always found that fascinating, that your sort of brain could sort of go into that mode very quickly. Like I'd ask a real technical question that maybe the answer would come in 2 or 3 days, and within 5 seconds you were like, yeah, I can do that. And it was just like how you go inside. When I don't understand it, how you were able to go inside and sort of commute and switch off.
It was for me. It was like I would go into this virtual space where my memories of a thing were accessible on one side, and like a library of mnemonics, things I could go into and then dig into, and on the right were the creative thoughts so when I'm darting my eyes back and forwards, I'm kind of pulling out memories, I'm throwing them into creative processes and going, right, well, that and that, how would that work out? And I would try and run the process and go and try and find the outcome. No, that's not going to work, this one. No. But then I'd remember the results of each one, and maybe bits and pieces of each would actually form the answer and say, well, I couldn't do it that way or that way, but that worked in this. And then in this sort of virtual space, I've sort of worked out the answer. But in working out the answer, I've worked out the process. So if I go all the way through I'll land at this. How definite is that? I think it's definite enough to give you a yes. And I felt compelled to give you your answer then. So when you asked me that, I didn't feel like I should go away and think about it. I always felt like this, that. And I've never questioned it. I've just thought, especially if it was a fascinating one, I'd want to sit and work it out there and then. I'd be this, that, this.
Just the way you explain that in terms of left side, right side brain makes total sense now. You know, in terms of the creative side of the brain and the logical side of the brain.
But it's like having access to it for me, that thoughts and feelings and things would just line up side by side, and I'd be stood in the middle, able to sort of grab things from each and pass them across and compare them to other memories, and then try and work them out on the other side, and a solution would just form itself, and then it would either make sense or it didn't. And sometimes when I said I don't know, it's because I had a piece missing and I didn't want to commit. And I was always like, well, if I can't answer the question, I'd rather just go, yeah, I'll work it out. I'm not like that. I'm like, I don't know. I need to know this bit first. And I've done that before. If I don't know, I need to work this bit out, and then I'll get back to you. But I'd gone as far as I could, interrogated that thing, and went, I just don't have enough information. But I feel like I have access to this machine, or this space where I can work things out and query memories and ask my brain to go and figure it out, like that, and seeing all the connections. This is where the patterns for me comes into it. I can see all the connections being made, or I can feel them being made, and having valid paths to follow, and things just being thrown out, and no. So I feel like some of it's automatic, and I'm participating in the process rather than being fully in control of it. So in some ways I'm watching it happen.
Yeah.
and occasionally I'll guide it because I've seen a bit of knowledge or something is easily accessible, like it's something I've done recently. And I'll go, no, this, and then so I'm contributing to this process that's going on, but my brain kind of just takes over and goes, oh, wait, we're going off on a little journey. I'm going to go this and this, some of these, one of them, four of these, that, this, oh yes, no, you know, and, or yes, or sometimes you might have even seen me sort of get so involved in it. I'm like, and I'd sort of stand up and go, probably, and I'm only half engaged with you, and I just walk out the office to go and start it. And by the time I got back to the office, I was most of the way through it, and then I would just sit and go, right, and then just start rattling away and find myself there. But it's the best way I can describe it is it's a bit like if you've ever watched The Good Doctor, where Sizemore, what's his name? The one that did is it Ronnie Sizemore? You know anyway he plays this heavily autistic surgeon, and there are moments in that show where he projects images of the heart, and you can see him pulling it apart and digging into it. That is so similar to the way I pull things apart, where I might have a piece of script and I'm just pulling routines out, and I'm looking at where the hard disk might react to this and how I need to store this over here, and I can see the data being queried up, and if I did this to it, then these columns would go missing, and you know, it's a very visual, and I can play with it, which is why I gesticulate a lot, because I'm moving these things around with my hands in front of me, so it's not perfectly lucid. I'm not seeing, you know, objects as though they are definitely there in front of me, but it's like they're still in here, and you know how blurry memories are. They're not precise, but it's a bit like I'm able to play with them out here, and what goes on in here sort of responds.
Yeah.
It's a fun process for me. I have a lot of fun when I'm given something like that, and I can just be inside my head and play with it. Yeah. So I'm not sure what more there is to cover other than I'd considered talking about specific circumstances to try and illustrate what it's like. So, you know, like when someone asks me, do I want to go to a restaurant? That's not, there is no simple yes or no there. There is an entire set of plans that have to be ran through, and to ask me to give you the yes or no there and then on the phone is really difficult. Unless I've been there, I know all the people that are going there, I know when we're going, I know what kind of food they have there, I know how to get parked there. If I've been there, know who's going, and there's no problem with that, I can mostly give you a yes. But when it's somewhere new, I need time to go on Google Street View, to go plan my route. How far away is it? Which way am I going? How am I getting there? What's the parking like when I get there? What's it like on the inside? What kind of, is it? Does everything have onions in it? All of that stuff. Who's going? Right. Why are we going? When are we going? What day? We're definitely going.
It's for 10 hours as well. Yeah.
No. See, once I've eaten, I want to go home.
Yeah.
As soon as I've finished my dinner, give us a couple of minutes to sort of, you know, let everything settle and whatnot. And then as soon as does anyone want desserts? I'm like, oh no, I just want to go. I just want to go because it's finished. Because it's finished. I don't eat pudding, right? So I'm finished. I would love to, in those situations, without any fear, I would love to be able to just stand up and say, here's my bit of the bill. See you later.
In saying that, the bit about the bill, you know, are you? So there's four of us eating. We all have a starter and a dessert, and you just have a main course. But we're splitting the bill 4 ways. How do you feel?
If I'm flush, if I've got plenty of dosh, it's not even a thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes because I know it will be a thing. So in those moments, I convince myself, look, doesn't matter, I can afford it,
Yeah.
and that's usually enough to make my brain go, all right, well, I'll not get fussy about it. I am fussy about it, but I can write it off by saying, do you know what? Doesn't matter. It's been a good night. I can afford it, and it makes everyone else happy. So then I don't have to have that difficult conversation about, well, I only had the main and one drink. You each had three drinks, a starter and a dessert, and you want me to. And I feel it's unfair, but I'm like, do you know what? Is that uncomfortable moment that I'm going to have more important than just paying an extra tenner? I think I'd just feel comfortable just paying the tenner.
Yeah.
Right. So quite often I've learned to give up in that moment. As much as I haven't 100% given up. I've given up enough to kind of just go, look, let's just. It's easier. It's easier because nobody will understand, and everybody will think I'm fussy or a dick or not generous enough or something. I don't know, but certainly the other way around, I won't run up someone else's bill.
No.
And if I do, I pay for it. I don't expect to be paid for, so I wouldn't do it the other way around. So I imagine that bugs you, does it?
Yeah, I was interested. I was just talking to a friend, and they go away on motorbikes quite a bit, and he was talking about one of their company members who avoids going to the bar, and how it brought him to stop going on the excursion. So almost like he was punishing himself for the fact that somebody else wasn't paying their way in terms of going to the bar. And I sort of said to him, well, why are you punishing yourself for somebody else? Why not just confront the issue and say, do you realise you don't go to the bar when it's your turn? And it's just like how we feel about certain situations, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I quite often drop myself out of the rounds. And I mean, you know me, I don't really drink anyway, so even I would sit with a bottle for an hour, right? A little bottle of Snall or something for an hour, right? It would be warm by the time I finished it. But even when I was out, I would generally try and drop myself out of the round and just say, no, you just go get your stuff, I'll just get my own.
Yeah.
Be right. That for me was so much simpler than keeping track.
Especially now, we don't like drinking 7 pints of water, do we?
No, this is the thing. So that came later. I mean, back in the day, when I first found drink, I was all about rounds, and I would pay my way because that's the way it should be, right? But then I just started dropping out. Thinking, I don't really drink. I don't want to keep up with these people either. Like, and it's not that important to me. So I would just play it. Say, look, you get yours. I'm what you having? I'm good. You go, and then that immediately drops you out with the cycle, and you can't jump into the cycle late, can you? So. It's just a social etiquette, I think, isn't it? You can't just suddenly join a set of rounds unless you've just come into the pub. But if you've been sat there, I suppose you could. But I try and stay out of it altogether. So a lot of my tactics are avoidance.
Yeah.
Are avoidance and suppression. Is it worth the battle? No. Will they get it? Probably not. So for me, as long as it's always on me, I feel that's fine. It probably isn't. There are people that say, well, you shouldn't have to. Yeah, but isn't it the simplest and sort of fairest option? I'm the one that has the brain like this, so first and foremost, I should try and cope with it. No, but you don't have to these days, and then the people I'm closest to, who know me well enough, I'm willing to share that with, and then they can have the choice. And some do. I must admit, some do. They'll say, no, you don't have to. I understand that. And I think that's the difference between, when your friends really do become family like that.
Yeah, it's almost like if I know the couple of times we've met, it's like, where do you fancy going? Let you lead. Well, we're going to this cafe, which is in Whitley Bay. We know where we're going. We know probably where we're going to sit. We know what we're going to have to eat. It's comfortable, and then we're off. So if you understand somebody like that, you probably, if you were in a group, you'd probably give them first choice about where you're going to go.
Because it's not going to hurt you any, is it?
No.
It would definitely make me uncomfortable to go somewhere. But if they're not bothered, then why not hand it to the person that is bothered?
Yeah, we're going to a disco from 10 till 1, and we're going to boogie all night.
No.
Yeah,
I mean, and I've occasionally compromised as well as a result. So I did turn up to one or two Pandora Christmas parties,
yeah,
as uncomfortable as all that was. And I left early. I always rocked up with my car. I never drank. And turning up with my car made me feel like I could go whenever I want. So I ultimately stayed longer than I would normally. I hate the idea of, oh, who's just jump in his car, we're all going with him. No, I'll go on my own. Then I've got my mode of escape. And even if I stayed as long as everyone else, I stayed because I knew it was my choice to stay, not because I was waiting on a lift or whatnot, right? So it's it's a lot. But so look, if anyone's got any questions or specific experiences they wanna put to either one of us. Oh no, I mean we should probably cover the ADHD portion and your sort of realizations of the things that are brought to your mind when you went through it, especially as your assessor had ADHD herself, right? So it must have led to some interesting conversations, and be interested to know what sort of things that's led to, and whether you've actually had any either a realization or a change, or an acceptance of anything. And you were even going to be, you did something with your dyslexia as well, and changed the way that you read, whether you wanted to read fast or detailed or read every word or skim them. You remember when you did that reading test and you tried the different ones? So we could maybe revisit some of that as well. But if anyone's got a question or something they want to put to us, if I can articulate it to you, I will. If I can help, I'd like to. So you can put those questions on our Facebook, on our Insta. You can drop them on the YouTube comments as well. But yeah, hit the like button. It helps us more than you know. It gets us into the algorithm. Same as hitting the subscribe or follow buttons on the channels. That helps us get in mix. Lets them know that what we're doing is useful to someone, right? But until next time, when we're probably doing wills and stuff, right? Because that was going to be your next topic about leaving things to people. And
I'm just more interested to understand this, where it comes from, this sort of thought process of having to hand things down. And is it a monarchy created thing? Why are we fixated on leaving things,
and there's a lot of bank of mum and dad these days.
Yeah, just the whole thing about death. If you ever get a chance, watch Ricky Gervais. He's funny, how he portrays it. But yeah, we'll cover some fun bits on maybe death the next time.
Yeah, because it can be a bit daft, can't it? Although it's going to be a while yet, because we're going to get to 100, right? So
yes,
so we've got a while to think about it. Aye. So until next week, take care.